you jump and start falling toward the sun. At first it doesn't feel real. The sun looks distant, small, almost harmless, but it's getting bigger, faster than you expect. Light begins to surround you, not just brightness, but something heavier, something you can feel. The heat starts slowly, like standing under intense sunlight. Then it rises. Every second, the temperature increases, the light becomes blinding, the space around you no longer feels empty. You're not just falling through space anymore. You're falling into something. A star. The gravity pulls harder now. Your speed increases. There is no stopping, no turning back. And then you realize something terrifying. You will never reach the surface, because there is no surface. Welcome to falling into space. And if you're ready to experience what really happens when you fall into the sun, don't forget to subscribe, because this is where everything begins to disappear. At the moment you let go, nothing feels different. You're still in space, still weightless, still surrounded by silence. Far ahead of you, sun glows like a distant light. Bright, yes, but not overwhelming. From here, it doesn't look dangerous, it looks calm. But that calm doesn't last. As you begin to fall, something subtle changes, not in your body, but in your path. You are no longer drifting, you are being pulled. The sun's gravity is always there, even from far away. It holds planets in orbit, keeps everything moving in predictable paths. But you are not in orbit, you are falling straight in. And that changes everything. At first, your speed increases slowly. There's no sudden drop, no rush of wind, no sensation of falling like on Earth. There is only motion, silent, invisible. You don't feel acceleration the way you expect. There is no ground beneath you, no reference point to measure against. Only the growing size of the sun ahead. It begins to expand in your view, slowly at first, then faster. What once looked like a small disk now takes up more and more of the sky. Its light becomes stronger, brighter, harder to ignore. You try to look directly at it, but it's already too intense. The brightness forces your eyes away. Even from this distance, the sun is not something you can look at for long, but the light is only the beginning. As you move closer, energy begins to reach you in a different way. Not just light, but heat. At first, it feels familiar, like standing under strong sunlight on Earth. Warm, intense. But there is a difference. There is no atmosphere here to soften it. No air to scatter the light, no clouds to block the energy. Nothing stands between you and the sun. The radiation travels directly, unfiltered, and it gets stronger every second. Your body starts to absorb more energy than it can handle. But it doesn't happen all at once. It builds. The warmth becomes heat. The heat becomes pressure. Your skin begins to feel it first. A constant exposure that doesn't fade, doesn't shift. There is no wind to cool you, no shadow to hide in, only direct energy coming from one source. You keep falling. The sun now dominates your entire field of view. Its surface is no longer smooth. You begin to see movement. Massive currents of plasma flowing across it. Bright regions, darker patches. The surface is alive, not solid, not stable. It shifts, twists, rises, and falls in patterns too large to fully understand. And all of it is getting closer. Your speed continues to increase. You are now moving faster than anything you have ever experienced. But again, you don't feel it the way you would on Earth. There is no air resistance, no sound, no force pushing against you. Only the pull forward, and the growing intensity of the star ahead. Now the heat is no longer just something you feel on the surface. It begins to affect everything. The energy is too strong to ignore. Your body cannot release heat fast enough. It starts to build inside you. Your senses become sharper for a moment, then strained. The light is overwhelming now. Even closing your eyes does not remove it. It penetrates. You try to orient yourself, but direction becomes meaningless. There is only one thing that matters: the sun, and it fills everything. At this point, you realize something important. This is not like falling toward a planet. There is no surface waiting for you, no ground to hit, no solid layer to reach. The sun is not a place you land. It is something you enter, and once you enter it, there is no turning back. The outer layers are already beginning to affect you. Even before contact, the environment is changing around you. Particles move faster. Energy increases. The space between you and the sun is no longer empty. It is filled with influence, radiation, heat, magnetic activity, all of it growing stronger as you move forward. Your fall continues. Faster, closer, brighter. And you are no longer just observing the sun. You are becoming part of its reach. Because the closer you get, the less space there is between you and everything it contains. And this is only the beginning. As you continue to fall toward sun, the space around you stops feeling empty. It begins to feel active. You are no longer just moving through darkness. You are moving through a region filled with energy. This is where the sun starts to extend beyond what you normally imagine. From far away, it looks like a single glowing sphere. But in reality, it reaches much farther than its visible edge. Particles are constantly flowing outward. Streams of charged energy moving through space. This is known as the solar wind. And now, you are inside it. At first, you don't notice it directly. There is no sound, no visible current pushing you. But the environment is changing. The closer you get, the stronger the radiation becomes. It is no longer just heat you feel. It is energy interacting with everything around you. The light grows more intense, not just brighter, but heavier. It fills your vision completely. There is no darkness left behind you. Only a faint sense of space that is quickly fading. Ahead of you, the sun is no longer a simple shape. You begin to see detail, huge arcs of plasma rising above its surface, massive eruptions stretching into space. These are solar flares and prominences. They don't happen quietly. They release enormous amounts of energy. And now, you are moving closer to them. Your speed continues to increase. Gravity pulls harder with every second. You are accelerating constantly, faster than any spacecraft could sustain for long. But again, you don't feel the speed itself. There is no resistance, no air pushing back, only forward motion and rising intensity. Now the heat becomes extreme. It is no longer something you can compare to sunlight on Earth. It is far beyond that. Your body cannot release heat at the same rate it is absorbing it. Energy builds rapidly. The light becomes blinding, not just visually, but physically overwhelming. Your senses begin to struggle. Everything becomes too bright, too intense. The environment around you is no longer stable. Particles are moving at high speeds. Magnetic fields shift and twist. The closer you get, the more chaotic it becomes. You are approaching the outer atmosphere of the sun. But it doesn't look like an atmosphere in the way you expect. There is no clear boundary, no sudden line where space ends and the sun begins. Instead, there is a gradual transition. Energy increases. Particles become denser. Everything becomes more active. You are entering a region called the corona, the outermost layer of the sun. And something strange happens here. The temperature rises dramatically. Even though you are still outside the visible surface, the heat is already extreme, hotter than many deeper layers. This doesn't seem logical at first, but the sun is not simple. Energy moves in ways that are difficult to predict, and now you are fully inside its outer influence. There is no separation anymore between space and star. You are surrounded by it. The light is constant. The heat is constant. The energy is constant. There is no direction to move that takes you away from it. Only deeper. Your fall continues, Faster now. Closer now. The sun fills everything. There is no sky, no horizon, only light and motion. You are no longer approaching the sun. You are inside it. And from this point on, everything changes. As you move deeper into sun, there is no clear moment where you cross a boundary. There is no surface to break through, no solid layer to land on. Instead, everything around you becomes thicker, brighter, more intense. The space you are falling through is no longer empty at all. It is filled with plasma. Not gas, not liquid, but something different, a state of matter where atoms are broken apart, electrons and nuclei moving freely, charged and constantly interacting. You are now inside the sun's outer layers. And the environment is no longer something you can observe from a distance. It surrounds you completely. The light is overwhelming, not just bright, but constant. There is no direction where it fades, no place where it becomes darker. Everything is glowing. The heat is beyond anything you have experienced. It is no longer a gradual increase. It is absolute. Energy moves through you faster than your body could ever handle. There is no cooling, no escape, only continuous exposure. Your movement continues, faster, deeper. Gravity keeps pulling you inward. But now, something else begins to matter. Resistance. For the first time since you started falling, the environment pushes back. The plasma is dense enough to slow you down, not instantly, but noticeably. Your speed still increases overall, but not as freely as before. You are no longer moving through empty space. You are moving through a medium, a hot, charged, constantly shifting medium. Currents flow around you, massive movements of plasma rising and falling. The sun is not still. It is active at every level. Energy is transported through these layers by motion. Hot material rises. Cooler material sinks, creating patterns that stretch across huge distances. And you are inside that movement now. There is no stable ground, no fixed direction, only flow. The deeper you go, the stronger the forces become. The pressure begins to increase, not in a sudden way, but steadily. More material above you, more weight pressing inward. The temperature rises further, not just from radiation now, but from direct contact with the plasma itself. Everything is interacting. Particles collide. Energy transfers constantly. There is no isolation. You are part of the environment. The idea of falling begins to lose meaning. Because you are no longer separate from the sun, you are inside it. The light is no longer something you see. It is something that surrounds you completely. Your senses would not function here. There is no contrast, no edges, only a uniform brightness that removes all sense of space. Time begins to feel different, not because it changes, but because there are no clear events to mark it. Everything is continuous. The deeper you go, the more the environment takes over. Gravity pulls inward, pressure builds, temperature rises, all at the same time. There is no single factor that defines what is happening. It is everything combined. Now the sun is no longer something ahead of you. It is everything around you. Above, below, all directions. There is no outside anymore, only deeper layers. And those layers become more intense the further you go. The plasma becomes denser, the pressure stronger, the temperature higher. Everything moves toward a center you cannot see, a region where conditions go far beyond anything at the surface. And as you continue, one thing becomes clear. You are not approaching an endpoint. You are moving into increasing extremes, layer after layer, each one more intense than the last. And there is no level where it stops, because the sun does not have a simple structure. It is a continuous gradient, from outer regions to inner ones, each more powerful than the one before, and you are moving through all of them, without pause, without resistance strong enough to stop you, only a gradual slowing as the environment becomes denser, but never enough to escape. because gravity is still pulling, always inward, and you continue to move deeper, into a place where everything you understand about matter, motion, and environment no longer applies in the same way. And this is still not the core. There is much more ahead. As you continue moving inward through sun, everything becomes heavier, not in a way you can compare to Earth, but in a way that surrounds you completely. The plasma around you grows denser. The space between particles becomes smaller. Movement is no longer free. You are still going deeper, but the environment resists you more with every moment. It does not stop you, but it slows the way you move. The idea of falling is changing. Before, you were accelerating freely through space. Now you are pushing through something that is pushing back. The deeper you go, the stronger that resistance becomes. The temperature continues to rise, not in steps, not in sudden changes, but steadily, always increasing. Everything around you carries energy. There is no cooler region, no stable layer, only more heat. Now the pressure becomes impossible to ignore. It builds from all directions. There is no surface pressing against you, but there is weight, a constant force created by everything above you. Every layer of the sun adds to it. The deeper you go, the more that weight increases. At this point, the environment is no longer something you pass through. It defines everything. The plasma moves in powerful currents, massive flows rising and falling inside the star. These movements are not gentle, they are slow compared to explosions, but enormous in scale, entire regions shifting over time, carrying energy outward and pulling material inward. You are inside that motion now, not separate from it. You move with it. Your direction is no longer clear, because there is no straight path, only movement influenced by gravity and flow. The light around you changes. It is still everywhere, but it becomes less distinct, not because it fades, but because it becomes trapped. Photons no longer travel freely here. They are absorbed, re-emitted, scattered again, over and over. Light takes a long time to move through these layers, not seconds, not minutes, much longer. The deeper you go, the harder it is for energy to escape, and that is why the sun shines the way it does. Energy created deep inside takes a long time to reach the surface, and now you are moving toward that source, the region where everything begins. But it is not close. Even though you have been falling continuously, the scale of the sun is enormous. You are still far from the center, and yet the conditions are already extreme. The plasma is thicker now, the pressure stronger, the temperature higher. Everything continues to increase. There is no point where it stabilizes, only a continuous change. Now the idea of inside becomes clear. You are no longer near the edge. You are within the body of the star, surrounded on all sides by matter and energy. There is no outside, no direction that leads back to empty space, only layers above and layers below. The deeper layers pull you forward. Gravity continues to act, always inward, even as resistance grows, even as movement slows. There is no balance, only progression. You continue to move deeper, through regions where the forces become harder to imagine. The sun is not just hot, it is structured, layered, each part playing a role in how energy moves, and you are passing through those parts one by one, without stopping, without control, and the deeper you go, the closer you get to the place where all of this energy is created. The core, a region unlike anything you have experienced so far. And everything up to this point has only been the outer part of the journey. As you continue moving deeper into sun, the idea of distance starts to lose meaning. Everything around you is the same substance. There is no clear boundary between where you are and where you are going. The plasma becomes even denser. movement slows further, not because gravity has weakened, but because the environment has become thicker. You are no longer falling freely. You are moving through resistance that grows with every moment. The temperature continues to rise. It does not peak. It does not level off. It keeps increasing. The energy in this region is constant, not in bursts, not in waves, but steady. Everything here is part of a process that never stops. Now the pressure reaches levels that are difficult to imagine. It comes from every direction, not pushing you down, but compressing inward. The deeper you go, the more layers of the sun are above you. Each one adds weight, each one adds force. There is no escape from it. Everything is contained within the star. The plasma around you behaves differently now. It moves less freely, not because it is still, but because it is tightly packed. Particles are closer together. Collisions are constant. Energy is transferred through these interactions, not by free movement, but by contact. Now something important begins to change. Light can no longer move easily. Photons are trapped. They travel only short distances before being absorbed and emitted again. This process repeats over and over. It takes a very long time for energy to move outward from this region, and you are moving inward toward the source of that energy. The brightness around you is still intense, but it is no longer clear or directional. There are no sharp features, no distinct shapes. Everything blends into a uniform environment. The sun is no longer something you observe. It is something you are fully inside. Now the motion of plasma changes again. You are entering a region where energy does not move through rising and falling currents. Instead, it moves through radiation, through the transfer of energy from particle to particle. This region is more stable, less turbulent, but far more intense. The temperature rises sharply here, much higher than in the outer layers. The pressure becomes extreme. Everything is compressed. There is no empty space between particles, only constant interaction. Gravity continues to pull inward. Even though resistance slows your movement, it does not stop it. You continue to move deeper, closer to the center, closer to the place where the sun produces its energy. Now, the scale of what you are approaching becomes clear. The core is not just another layer. It is the region where conditions are so extreme that matter behaves in a completely different way. This is where nuclear reactions happen, where hydrogen atoms are forced together to form helium, releasing enormous amounts of energy in the process. This energy is what powers the entire star. And it begins here. You are moving toward that region, through layers that grow hotter and denser with every moment. The pressure continues to increase. It becomes impossible to imagine in terms of anything on Earth. The temperature follows, rising to levels far beyond the outer layers. Everything here is controlled by these conditions. Nothing exists outside of them. Now the journey changes again. It is no longer about passing through layers. It is about reaching the point where those layers begin. The origin of all the energy you have been feeling, the center of the sun. And as you move closer, one thing becomes clear. Everything you have experienced so far was only preparing you for what comes next. Because the core is not just hotter, it is something entirely different. As you move closer to the center of sun, everything reaches a level that no longer feels gradual. Up to this point, each layer has been more intense than the one before. But now, the difference becomes extreme. The plasma around you is no longer something that flows. It is compressed so tightly that movement is limited. Particles are packed together. Collisions happen constantly. There is no space to move freely, only interaction. The temperature continues to rise, not just hotter, but far beyond anything that could exist outside a star. The energy here is constant. It does not fluctuate. It does not drop. It remains at a level where matter behaves differently. Now the pressure becomes overwhelming. It is not something you feel as a force pushing in one direction. It is everywhere, equal from all sides, created by the weight of the entire star above. Every layer you passed through is now pressing inward, and at this depth that force is enormous. The deeper you go, the less distinction there is between different parts of the environment. Everything becomes uniform. Temperature, pressure, density, all reaching extreme values. You are now entering the core region. This is where the sun produces its energy, not through burning in the way you understand it, but through nuclear fusion. Hydrogen atoms are forced together under immense pressure. Their nuclei combine to form helium, and in that process, energy is released, a vast amount of it. This energy is what eventually travels outward through the layers you passed earlier. It powers the light and heat that reach space. But here, at the source, it is constant. Fusion is happening continuously. Every moment, countless reactions occur, not as explosions, but as a steady process. This is what keeps the sun stable. The outward push from energy balances the inward pull of gravity, and at the center, that balance is maintained. Now, everything around you is part of that system. There is no difference between the environment and the process itself. The core is not a place you can stand in. It is a region defined by conditions: extreme temperature, extreme pressure, extreme density, all working together. The light here is no longer something that travels freely. It is trapped. Photons move slowly, constantly interacting with matter. It can take an extremely long time for energy generated here to reach the surface. But you are moving inward, not outward. You are approaching the point where that energy begins. Now the idea of direction becomes meaningless. There is no up, no down, only inward. Everything pulls toward the center, and everything around you reflects that. The environment is no longer changing in a noticeable way. It has reached its maximum. The temperature does not increase significantly beyond this point. The pressure does not suddenly spike, because you are already at the level where the sun maintains its core conditions. This is the limit, the region where everything balances: gravity pulling inward, energy pushing outward, and that balance defines the structure of the star. You are now inside that balance. At the center of it, there is no further layer to pass through, no deeper region to reach. This is the origin, the point from which all energy begins its journey outward, and everything you experienced on the way here was part of that journey in reverse, from the outer layers, through increasing intensity, to the core where everything is constant, everything is extreme, and everything remains in balance, because without that balance, the sun would not exist as it does. And now you are at the center of it, at the place where the star holds itself together and creates everything it sends into space. At this depth inside sun, nothing behaves the way it did before. There are no clear shapes, no edges, no separate layers you can point to and say, this is where one thing ends and another begins. Everything blends into a single environment. The core is not a place you can stand in. It is a condition, a region where temperature, pressure, and density have reached values that allow one thing to happen continuously: fusion. Hydrogen nuclei are being forced together, not because they want to combine, but because the pressure leaves them no choice. The force pressing inward is so strong that it overcomes the natural repulsion between particles. And when they merge, something changes. A small amount of mass is lost, converted into energy. That energy spreads outward. It does not move quickly. It does not escape instantly. It begins a long journey through the star. But here, at the center, it is being created all the time. There is no pause, no gap between reactions. Everything happens continuously. Now, the idea of movement becomes difficult to follow. You are not moving through space in the way you were before. You are inside a region where everything is already compressed and interacting. The forces are balanced. Gravity pulls inward. Energy pushes outward. And because these forces match, the sun does not collapse. It holds its shape. This balance is what defines the core, not stillness, but stability. The conditions here do not fluctuate much. They remain within a narrow range that allows the process to continue. If the temperature dropped slightly, fusion would slow. If it increased too much, the balance would shift. But the system adjusts. That is why the sun remains stable for such a long time. Everything is regulated by the interaction between gravity and energy. Now, think about what that means. Everything you felt earlier, the heat, the radiation, the light, all of it started here, at this point, and it has been happening for billions of years. The sun has been producing energy at this rate for most of its existence, and it will continue to do so for a long time. From here, energy begins its path outward. But it does not travel in a straight line. It moves through countless interactions, absorbed and re-emitted over and over. It can take a very long time for energy created here to reach the surface, but once it does, it escapes into space as light and heat. And that is what you saw at the beginning, the bright object in the sky, the light that seemed distant and calm. All of it began here. Now you understand something important. The sun is not burning like a fire. It is not consuming fuel in the way you might expect. It is converting mass into energy through fusion, a process that is controlled, continuous, and stable, and the core is where that process exists. Everything else in the star depends on it. The outer layers, the radiation, the solar wind, all of it is connected to what happens here. Now imagine staying in this region. There is no change, no variation. The conditions remain constant, because this is the point where everything is balanced. Nothing pushes the system out of this state. It simply continues. And that is why the sun remains as it is, not changing quickly, not collapsing, not exploding, just existing in a stable condition created by its own forces. And everything you experienced on the way here was part of understanding that structure. From the empty space outside, to the outer layers, to this central region, where everything begins, and everything is held together. Because without this balance, the sun would not exist at all. And now you have reached the point where that balance is maintained, the center of the star, where energy is created, and everything else follows. Now that you are deep inside sun, something becomes clear. Nothing here is changing in a way you can notice. There are no sudden events, no visible motion like waves or winds. Everything continues in the same state. The core is stable, not because nothing is happening, but because everything is happening in balance. Fusion continues at the same rate. Pressure remains constant. Temperature stays within a narrow range. It may feel like nothing is moving, but in reality, everything is active. Reactions are happening continuously. Particles are interacting constantly. Energy is being created every moment. And yet, from your perspective, it feels still. That stillness is not calm. It is the result of equilibrium. A balance between forces that do not stop. Gravity pulls inward. Energy pushes outward. And as long as those two forces match, the system remains unchanged. This balance has existed for billions of years. It is what allows the sun to shine steadily, without flickering, without sudden collapse. Now think about what would happen if that balance changed. If gravity became stronger than the outward pressure, the sun would begin to collapse. If the energy produced inside became too strong, it would push outward and expand. But neither happens, because the system adjusts itself. That adjustment is constant. Small changes are corrected, small imbalances are restored, and the result is stability. Now, as you remain in this region, something else becomes clear. There is no deeper place to go. You have reached the center. There is no further inward direction. Everything around you is part of the same core. Uniform. Consistent. The temperature does not rise significantly beyond this point. The pressure does not increase in a way you can distinguish. You are already at the maximum conditions that define the star. This is where everything begins. Every photon that will eventually leave the sun starts its journey here. But that journey is slow. Energy does not escape easily. It takes time to move through the dense layers above, much longer than you would expect. The light you see from the sun on Earth began here, long before it reached the surface, and yet from the outside it feels immediate. This shows how different the inside of a star is from what you observe from a distance. From far away, the sun looks simple, a bright object in the sky. From here, it is complex, structured, balanced. Now imagine time passing. Nothing changes in a noticeable way. The core continues to produce energy. The balance continues to hold. And this will go on for a very long time. The sun is not close to the end of its life. It will continue this process for billions of years, slowly converting hydrogen into helium, maintaining the same structure, maintaining the same balance, until the fuel in the core begins to run out. But that is far in the future. Right now, everything remains stable. Everything remains in place. And that stability is what allows everything else to exist. The planets, the light, the energy that reaches space. All of it depends on what is happening here. And here, nothing stops. Nothing changes quickly. Everything continues exactly as it should. A constant system. A stable process. At the very center of the star. After everything you've moved through inside sun, the most surprising part is not how extreme it is, but how consistent it is. Nothing here depends on a moment. Nothing waits for an event to begin or end. The core does not turn on. It does not turn off. It continues. Fusion happens at the same steady rate. Pressure remains balanced. Temperature holds within the same range. From your perspective, it feels like time has stopped. But it hasn't. Time is still moving. It just doesn't bring visible change. Now think about what that means for everything outside. Every second, energy is created here. That energy begins moving outward, slowly, through countless interactions. It does not travel in a straight line. It does not escape quickly. It moves step by step through layers you passed earlier, from dense regions to less dense ones, until it finally reaches the surface, and when it does, it leaves as light. That light travels across space. It reaches planets. It warms them. It makes life possible, all from this single region. Now imagine how long this has been happening. For billions of years, the sun has maintained this process, not changing significantly, not collapsing, not expanding uncontrollably, just continuing. This is what makes it stable, not because it is simple, but because it is balanced. Everything inside the sun depends on that balance. If it changes too much, the structure of the star changes, but the system prevents that. Small shifts are corrected. Small variations are absorbed, and the result is consistency. Now consider the journey you have taken, from empty space to the outer layers, to the inner regions, to the core. Each step revealed more intensity, more pressure, more energy. But here, at the center, you find something different, not increasing extremes, but maintained extremes. a condition that does not grow stronger, because it has already reached what it needs to be. This is the limit, not a boundary you cross, but a state that defines everything inside, and once you reach it, there is nothing further to experience, only continuation. Now imagine looking at the sun again from far away, a bright sphere in space. From that distance, it looks simple. But now you understand what is hidden inside, layers of increasing intensity, a core where energy is created, a system that holds itself together, all working continuously, all maintaining balance, and everything you see from the outside depends on it. The light, the heat, the stability of the solar system, all of it begins here, and it does not stop. That is what defines the sun, not just its brightness, but its consistency, a star that continues to produce energy in the same way for billions of years, and everything you experienced was part of understanding that process. From the outside, to the inside, to the center, where everything begins, and everything continues. After everything you've seen inside sun, one final idea becomes clear. Nothing here happens for you. Nothing changes because you are present. The sun does not react. It does not notice. It does not adjust. Everything continues exactly as it always has. Fusion continues in the core. Energy moves outward. The outer layers respond in the same patterns. From the inside, it feels constant. From the outside, it looks stable. And that stability is what allows everything else to exist. Now think about the scale of what you are inside. The sun is not just large. It is enormous compared to anything you experience directly. Its gravity controls the motion of planets. Its energy shapes the entire solar system. And all of that depends on the processes you have just moved through. From the outer layers to the core, everything is connected. Each region plays a role. Each layer contributes to how the star behaves. And none of it stops. Now imagine what happens over long periods of time. The sun continues to convert hydrogen into helium, slowly, steadily. Over millions of years, the composition of the core changes. The balance shifts very slightly, but not enough to disrupt the system. The star adjusts, maintains stability. This is why the sun lasts so long. It does not burn quickly. It does not use all its energy at once. It operates in a controlled process. Now consider what would happen if that control did not exist. If fusion were not balanced by gravity, the sun would not hold together. If gravity were too strong, it would collapse inward. If energy output were too high, it would expand outward. But neither happens, because the system maintains equilibrium. That equilibrium is what you have been moving through. At every stage, forces oppose each other. Gravity pulls inward. Energy pushes outward. And the result is stability. Now, when you think about your journey, it becomes clear that it was never about reaching a final destination. There is no surface to land on, no center you can stand in, only conditions that define different regions, and at the deepest point, those conditions remain constant. There is nothing beyond that. No further layer, no deeper structure, only continuation. Now imagine leaving. If you could move outward again, you would pass through the same layers in reverse, from the core to the dense inner regions to the outer layers and back into space. Each layer becoming less intense as you move away, until you reach the empty space you started from, and from there the sun would look simple again, a bright object in the sky. But now you would understand what lies inside, a system of balance, a structure built on opposing forces, a process that continues over immense periods of time, and that understanding changes everything. Because the sun is not just a source of light, it is a stable system that produces energy in a controlled way, a system that supports everything around it. And without that stability, nothing in the solar system would exist as it does. Now, when you think about falling into the sun, the idea becomes different. It is not just about the heat, not just about the intensity. It is about entering a system that is complete, a system that does not need anything else, a system that continues whether you are there or not. And in that system, everything follows the same rules. From the outer edge to the very center, everything exists in balance. And that balance is what keeps the sun alive. When you step back from everything you've experienced inside sun, one thing stands out more than anything else. It never needed to change. From the moment you began your fall, every layer you passed through was already there, already stable, already part of a system that has been running for billions of years. Nothing started when you arrived. Nothing ended because you reached the center. The sun does not have moments the way you understand them. It has processes. Continuous, unbroken processes that define how it exists. Fusion in the core. Energy moving outward. Outer layers responding to that energy. All of it happening at the same time. All of it connected. Now think about how different that is from what you experience on Earth. On Earth, events happen in sequences. Things begin, change, and end. On the sun, there is no clear beginning or ending to what you observed, only continuation. That is what makes it feel so complete. Because every part depends on every other part. The core produces energy. That energy moves outward. The outer layers respond to it. And the entire structure holds together because of that interaction. Remove one part, and everything changes. But nothing is removed. Everything remains. Now consider how long this has been happening. For billions of years, the sun has maintained this balance. Not perfectly unchanging, but stable enough to continue. Slow changes happen. The core slowly converts hydrogen into helium. The structure adjusts slightly over time, but these changes are small compared to the overall system. They do not disrupt the balance. They are part of it. Now imagine the future. The sun will not remain exactly as it is forever. Eventually, the hydrogen in the core will decrease. The balance will begin to shift. The star will change. But that moment is far away. Right now, everything remains in its stable state. Everything continues as it has for a very long time. And everything you experienced is part of that stability, from the outer layers where energy escapes to the inner regions where it is created. All of it exists in a single system. Now, when you think about falling into the sun, the meaning changes again. It is not just a journey into something extreme. It is a journey into something complete, a structure that does not need anything else to function, a system that continues on its own. And when you enter it, you do not change it. You only experience it. Now imagine looking at the sun again from a distance, a bright, steady light in the sky. From far away, it appears simple. But now you understand that simplicity is only on the surface. Inside, everything is connected, everything is balanced, everything is constant, and that is what defines it. Not its brightness, not its size, but its ability to continue, to produce energy steadily, to maintain its structure, to exist over immense periods of time. And everything you saw, everything you experienced, was part of understanding that. A system that does not stop, a process that does not break, a star that continues to shine, because everything inside it works together. In the end, nothing about sun feels like an ending. There is no final moment, no point where everything stops and becomes silent, because the sun does not work that way. It does not build toward a conclusion. It does not move toward a single event. It continues. From the outside, it looks simple, a bright, steady light in the sky. But now you understand what that light represents. It is not just brightness. It is the result of everything happening inside. Fusion in the core, energy moving outward, layers responding and maintaining balance, all of it happening at once, all of it continuing without interruption. Now think about your entire journey. You started far away, where the sun looked distant and calm. You moved closer, where light became stronger and heat began to rise. You entered the outer layers, where space itself stopped feeling empty. You moved deeper, where plasma surrounded you and pressure increased. You reached the core, where energy is created and balance is maintained. At every step, things became more intense, more complete, until there was nothing left to increase, only a state that continues. And that is the final realization. There is no surface to reach, no end to arrive at, only a system that exists at every level. From the outer edge to the center, everything is part of the same structure. And once you understand that, the idea of falling into the sun changes. It is not about reaching something. It is about entering something that is already complete. A structure that does not need to change. A system that does not depend on your presence. Everything you experienced was not something new. It was simply the reality of the star itself, and that reality continues whether you observe it or not. Now imagine stepping back again. From far in space, the sun still shines, still steady, still unchanged. Nothing about your journey altered it. Nothing interrupted its process. Because it does not rely on anything outside itself. It maintains its own balance, and that balance is what keeps everything stable. Now, one final idea remains. Everything you saw inside the sun is happening all the time. Not once, not occasionally, constantly. Every second, energy is created. Every moment it begins moving outward, and eventually that energy reaches space. It becomes light, it becomes heat. It travels across the solar system. It reaches planets. It reaches Earth. And it becomes part of everything you experience there. That connection is what makes the sun important, not just as an object in space, but as a system that supports everything around it. And now you understand that system. From the outside, to the inside, to the very center, where everything begins, and everything continues. Because the sun does not end, it simply shines.